Order. I call Tony Vaughan to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr Vickers. It's always a pleasure to serve under your chairship. I beg to move that this House has considered e-petition number 7014 relating to decriminalising abortion. The petition creator is Gemma Clark, and this is what her e-petition says. I'm calling on the UK government to remove abortion from the criminal law so that no pregnant person can be criminalised for procuring their own abortion. I know that Gemma became involved in campaigning on this issue during the pandemic. She was particularly alarmed by the tactics of some campaigners who were harassing women trying to access abortions in Scotland. And Gemma also has a friend who has experienced a stillbirth but was then investigated by the police. She is worried that there is a lot of misinformation around abortions, especially late-term abortions, and this is linked to the rise of extreme ideologies and misogyny. She is a primary school teacher and is fearful that the young girls she is educating now will have fewer rights when they grow up than she does. I thank Gemma and the over 103,000 people from across the UK who signed her petition, which includes 152 from my constituency of Folkestone and Hythe. And I also want to thank 55 of my own constituents who emailed me to express their views on the issue, which have fed into this speech. Now, how is abortion criminalised in the UK? Well, it depends where you live. Abortion is effectively decriminalised in Northern Ireland, whereas in England, Wales and Scotland, long-standing laws maintain the criminalisation of abortion. In England, Wales and Scotland, there are two main offences: procuring miscarriage under Section 58 of the 1861 Offence Against a Person Act. The second is child destruction under Section 1 of the Infant Life Preservation Act 1929. Yes.
He's describing the law. One of the justifications behind the 67 Abortion Act is it would end backseat abortions, and indeed we do have abortion on demand in safe environments, whether you like it or not. I'm just wondering whether he thinks that if these proposals go ahead and de facto it becomes possible to have an abortion at home up to birth, this could endanger women's health. And is he not worried about that, or is not the movers of this petition worried about that?
Tony Vaughan.
I'm grateful for the Honourable Member's intervention. I'm not aware that following the decriminalisation of abortion in Northern Ireland there has been a strong current to recriminalise it, which might be met if, for example, the situation that the Honourable Member referred to as increasing had actually occurred, but that is not my understanding. So in relation to each of those two offences, sentences of up to life imprisonment apply. And in relation to child destruction, a person is guilty of that offence where the pregnancy is at least 28 weeks and they commit a willful act causing the child's death, and it's a defence if the act was done to preserve the mother's life. The procuring miscarriage offence can be committed at any stage of gestation where a person uses a poison or instrument to induce miscarriage, and there are defences, variously, as the Honourable Member says, under the Abortion Act, where two registered medical practitioners authorise abortion in an approved clinic in broadly four situations. One, where there's a risk of injury to the mother's physical or mental health up to 24 weeks, and that was the exception that was expanded during COVID so that women could access pills for medical abortions at home for pregnancy of up to 10 weeks following a consultation. The second and third exceptions, yes.
Carla Lockhart.
The Honourable Member made around Northern Ireland. I think it's important to note that Northern Ireland does not have at-home abortions. We don't have pills by post, and much of the decriminalisation of abortion in England and here in the mainland is focused around the at-home abortions. So Northern Ireland is a very different context, and I don't think it should be used in the same train of thought.
I note the Honourable Member's point. In relation... Yes.
I think in a different way. Of course, it's worth noting that the Northern Ireland Human Rights Commissioner has explicitly called for telemedicine to be made available to women in Northern Ireland. And because we have a human rights framework in Northern Ireland, the government has to respond to that or risk being taken to court again by her for failing to uphold the human right of women in Northern Ireland to access a safe and legal abortion. We have no such protections here in England and Wales as yet. Is that not the case?
Tony Vaughan.
My honourable friend is right, and of course it was the 2018 Supreme Court decision in the Northern Ireland case which showed that those rules, as were then enforced, violated the human rights of women. And that has to be at the centre of considerations that we have around this issue. Just to finish off on the exception so I can get into the points: risk of grave or permanent injury, risk to the mother's life, substantial fetal abnormality are exceptions without any gestational time limit. And I'll just press on because I'm conscious of the time, and maybe that we come back to that. All right, okay.
Jim Shannon.
The reason why I know
10 minutes.
I checked with Mr Sherman before to ensure that we'd probably have ample time to speak, but just for the record, I think it's important while the abortion legislation we have in Northern Ireland, I say this respectfully to the gentleman, he knows I do this in the way that I always try to do it. The legislation for Northern Ireland was imposed by Westminster upon Northern Ireland because we had the Northern Ireland Assembly that was working at that time. Therefore, the elected representatives never had a chance to have an input into the process, and the people of Northern Ireland, according to the polls that took place in Northern Ireland, were very much against the type of legislation coming in. So at the end of the day, when the Honourable Gentleman refers to Northern Ireland and the legislation, it's a Northern Ireland legislation that we, government imposed here, but Northern Ireland had no input into.
Tony Vaughan.
I thank the Honourable Member for his intervention. I do kind of come back to what I said to the Honourable Member on the bench opposite in terms of I'm not aware, whatever the position may have been at the time of those laws coming into force, I'm not aware of there being a movement or a democratic support for changing the law back to what it was before. And I think when we're talking about whether laws meet the current standards of societal norms, I think that is the most important thing. But I want to turn now to how the law is being applied in England and Wales. Until 2022, it was believed that only 3 women had been convicted of having an illegal abortion in the 150 years since the 1861 Act, which is under which most illegal abortions are prosecuted. But there has been a recent increase in the prosecutions of women for procuring miscarriage under the 1861 Act. The CPS has reported that for the period January 19 to March 2023, 6 people were charged with child destruction and 11 were charged with procuring miscarriage under Section 58 of the 1861 Act. Now, one of those people was Nicola Parker. She took home abortion medication following a teleconsultation, believing that she was less than 10 weeks pregnant. She was in fact 26 weeks, accused of having an illegal abortion. On the 7th of November 2020, she was in hospital. The next day... yes.
Order. Can I just clarify whether this is a live case or not?
My understanding that this has been disposed of. She was found not guilty of those charges last month, I believe. Yes.
Catherine Fuchs.
I thank the Honourable Gentleman for giving way, and would my Honourable friend agree with me that the best way of keeping the protections that women have now to have an abortion and also to stop the criminalisation of women that you've been talking about is to support the upcoming new Clause 1, which my friend, the Honourable Member for Gower, is bringing the new Clause 1 to the Crime and Policing Bill.
I thank the Honourable Member for her intervention. I agree and I will support that amendment. So Miss Packer was in hospital one day, she was arrested the next, and it took 5 years before the courts could dispose of that case. Carla Foster is another situation where a mother was jailed for illegally taking abortion tablets to end her pregnancy during lockdown. She was sentenced initially to 28 months in prison. This was a mother of 3 who had been somebody of exceptionally good character and who had suffered from poor mental health. She had quickly admitted to police that she had provided incorrect information during the consultation. On appeal, the Court of Appeal reduced the term to 14 months and suspended the sentence. But by this point, she'd already served 35 days in prison and had been denied any communication with her children, one of whom was autistic. And in reducing her sentence, the judge said that this was a case that calls for compassion and not punishment, and that there was no useful purpose in keeping her in prison.
Would you give way
yes.
on that? I thank him for this important debate. Would he agree with me that at the heart of this discussion are some key principles? He's mentioned one there, compassion, but also choice and bodily autonomy. And whatever stage we're at our lives, it's important that we're allowed to make choices about our own bodies, free from fear of criminalisation or judgment.
Tony Vaughan.
I entirely agree with the Honourable Member, and thank you for her work on the Terminal Adults Bill, which engages that principle of autonomy. Now, I find it hard to read about those cases that I just talked about and not feel that the time has come to abandon the practice of criminalising and imprisoning women for choices they make about their own pregnancy. Yeah.
I thank my honourable member for giving way, and I thank all those people that signed the petition to make sure that we had this debate. Is he aware that over 200 women have actually been investigated for this? And is he aware, and does he agree with me, that some of the police tactics that are then used by using crime scene tape and excluding families from their own family home, removing children, even in cases where no charges are brought, is extremely traumatising to the family and to the woman who has suffered the loss of a child, whether by her own decision or because of a miscarriage.
I thank the my honourable friend for her intervention and for noting that statistic, which I wasn't aware of. But it does make the point that criminalisation involves traumatisation all the way through, from the moment of investigation to charge, to arrest, and all the way through the system, which is why I was saying that the time has come to abandon these outdated practices. And I struggle to see how it can be a good use of the scarce resources in our criminal justice system to prosecute and imprison women in these situations. Now, I believe that our laws cannot be fixed relics of the past, but must reflect social attitudes and societal norms. A YouGov poll of 2,098 adults in September 2023 found that 52% of respondents believed that women should not face prosecution for having an abortion, while only 21% of respondents believed that prosecution was appropriate. At the international level, and as the petition creator Gemma White Clark has rightly reminded me, the World Health Organisation's 2022 guidelines on safe abortion recommends removing medically unnecessary policy barriers to safe abortion, such as criminalisation. And more than 30 of the organisations representing medical practitioners in this country support decriminalising abortion, such as the British Medical Association, the Royal College of Nursing, the Faculty of Public Health, the Centre for Reproductive Rights, the Royal College of Midwives, and the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynaecologists. And Dr. Rani Thacker, the President of the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynaecologists, has said that abortion that happens outside of the current law generally involves very vulnerable women, including those facing domestic abuse, mental health challenges, or barriers to accessing NHS care. Yet, alarmingly, prosecutions of women have been increasing in recent years. Abortion is an essential form of healthcare and should be subject to regulatory and professional standards like other medical procedures and not criminal sanctions. As I've mentioned, Northern Ireland repealed the criminal provisions that we referred to. In a similar way, my honourable friends, the member for the Gower and the member for Walthamstow, have proposed amendments to the Crime and Policing Bill which disapply those provisions, which would eliminate the risk of prosecution for women who self-manage abortions or seek care beyond current legal limits. Now, in relation to the member for Gower's amendment, access to abortion services would remain exactly as it is, as I understand it, including as to time limits, grounds for abortion and the requirement for 2 doctors. The member for Walthamstow is in a much better position than me to talk about her amendment will follow similar principles, but I won't stray into her territory by saying more at this stage. But the key point here is it's about regulation. It's about maintaining the situation where you have regulation, but criminalisation is a very different matter. I appreciate there are organisations who are passionately opposed to decriminalising abortion. I believe that decriminalisation does not mean deregulation. As I've said, my honourable friends and members for Gower and Walthamstow propose to maintain a body of rules on access to and provision of abortion, such as the existing time limit, which would remain in force. I understand that some people claim that decriminalising abortion would lead to significant increases in the number of women performing dangerous late-stage abortions at home, as has been suggested. But I think this would be highly unlikely, as the latest figures available from 2022 reveal that 88% of abortions were performed at under 10 weeks gestation. And I've not seen, as I've said in response to interventions, evidence to suggest that removing the criminal law deterrent would then motivate swathes of women to have abortions after 24 weeks. And indeed, in Northern Ireland, I haven't heard of any campaigns to recriminalise due to unforeseen consequences. Yes.
I thank the member for giving way for the excellent speech he's making. Many of my constituents have contacted me and I support the amendments to decriminalisation. Does he also recognise that this would bring us in line with other countries, including France, Ireland, Canada and Australia to note a few countries?
I thank the honourable member for her intervention. It is noted. Yes.
Carla Lockhart.
The honourable member for giving way, and he mentions other countries and that there's no evidence to say that it will increase abortions. What would he respond to New Zealand, where abortion was decriminalised in March of 2020, And since 2020, there has been a 43% increase in late-term abortions between 20 weeks gestation and birth in the same year compared with 2019.
I'm not aware of that statistic, and it may be that I can look into it and say more about it in closing. Now,
will my honourable friend give way?
yes.
Tom Hayes.
Thank you. This Parliament must protect women's fundamental healthcare rights. That's what nearly 200 of my constituents have said in signing this petition. That's why I have co-signed Amendment New Clause 17 to the Crime and Policing Bill proposed by my honourable friend for Walthamstow. We face a global backlash against abortion access. The US Vice President has criticised our buffer zones, citing a case in my Bournemouth East constituency. I visited the clinic that was identified by the Vice President. I've met with staff. They deserve safety and freedom from harassment. They've been concerned about the tampering and vandalism of their vehicles. They're concerned about rising hostility. Would my honourable friend agree with me that many of my constituents deserve fundamental human rights? We must lock in these rights, prevent future rollbacks, put them beyond the reach of politicians, and does he agree that we need to end the threat of prosecution and decriminalise abortion?
I agree with my honourable friend and thank him for his intervention. And as Member for Walthamstow said, as I've said, these are human rights issues. Courts have highlighted incompatibilities where that has been the case, and it's important that those principles guide our approach to this. I'm in favour of regulation of abortion, but I'm also in favour of decriminalising it, so that abortion can once and for all be treated as the law as a matter of healthcare, not criminality, and so that individual rights to bodily autonomy can be exercised without fear of prosecution at one of the most physically and mentally vulnerable points in any woman's life. I look forward to hearing the contributions of other members and the government, and will